another video by AeroGuard. My name is Krista and I'm an instructor at the Georgetown, Texas location. Today we're going to be talking about aviation medical certificates. In order to get a pilot certificate, you'll first need to get an aviation medical certificate. Today we'll discuss the different classes of medical certificates and the privileges and limitations associated with each of them. Medical certificates are broken up into three classes. You've got first, second, and third. Each class comes with its own set of privileges, but we'll talk more about that later on. You might be wondering which class of medical you might need. The answer to this all depends on what your aviation goals are. For example, if your goal is just to be a private pilot, you'll only need a minimum of a third-class medical to exercise the privileges of a private pilot. However, if your goal is to be a commercial pilot, you'll need at least a second-class medical. And finally, if your goal is to be an airline transport pilot, you'll need a first-class medical to exercise the privileges of an ATP certificate. Even though you only need a third-class medical to start your flight training, if your ultimate goal is to get an ATP certificate, it is highly recommended that you get a first-class medical before you start flight training. This makes sure that you're qualified to get one. Let's start by talking about how long these privileges last, which depends on your age. If you're under 40 years old and you start with a first-class medical, the privileges of that will last for 12 calendar months. If you start with a second-class medical, the privileges of that will also last for 12 calendar months. Finally, if you start with a third-class medical, these privileges will last for 60 calendar months. So let's say you have a first-class medical, and you're under 40 years old, 12 calendar months go by, and you still haven't renewed it. What happens then? Your first-class medical is still a first-class medical, however, you can no longer exercise the privileges of a first-class medical. Instead, your privileges will revert to that of a third-class medical for remaining 48 calendar months. Now let's talk about how long your privileges will last if you're over 40. If you start with a first-class medical, your privileges will last for 6 calendar months. With a second-class medical, it'll be 12 calendar months, and if you start with a third-class medical, it'll be for 24 calendar months. If you're over 40 and your first-class medical is not renewed within 6 calendar months, it'll revert to the privileges of a second-class medical for an additional 6 months. Finally, if your privileges are not renewed after another 6 calendar months, it'll revert to the privileges of a third-class medical for an additional 12 calendar months. It's important for you to know that only an aviation medical examiner can issue you a medical certificate. An aviation medical examiner, or AME, is an FAA appointed doctor. To find an AME, you can visit aopa.com. One more topic I'd like to discuss is Basic Med. Basic Med is a way for general aviation pilots to keep flying without renewing their third-class medical. Basic Med comes with its own set of privileges and limitations. Let's start by talking about what you need in order to obtain a Basic Med certificate. The first thing is that you need to have had a medical after July 15th, 2006. This medical does not need to be current, as I stated earlier, but you still need to have had one. The second thing is that you need a U.S. driver's license. Third, you need to take an online medical education course every 24 calendar months. And finally, you'll need to have a comprehensive medical exam checklist completed by your own physician every 48 months. Basic Med exercises the same privileges as a third-class medical, but let's take a look at some of its limitations. You can only carry 5 passengers. It's important to note that the plane has to be designed to have 5 passenger seats. For example, if you were to fly a plane that had 8 seats and remove 2 of them, that's not considered compliant under Basic Med privileges. The aircraft cannot weigh more than 6,000 pounds. There's also a speed limit of 250 knots indicated. Finally, you cannot fly into Class Alpha airspace. I hope this video was informative for you. If you want to read more about the topic, you can reference 61.23 in the FAR AIM. If you enjoyed this content, please hit the like and subscribe button, and we'll see you next time.